Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. Where first up, we're in the KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa at the wonderful Tembe Elephant Park. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to sit back, relax, and watch as the animals come down to quench their thirsts and cool off, as these elephants are doing here in the Tembe Elephant Park. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the Wild Earth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth as it appears on your screen. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, send it on through. We also got some woolly-necked storks here in the foreground, just on the opposite end of the waterhole to the elephants, who seemingly having a bit of a dust bathe. Seems to be quite nice and warm, and a lovely winter's day in this part of the country. Don't seem to be any clouds in the sky, so it does bode well that there'll be lots of animals coming down for a drink. Bit of movement there. I don't know if it's a breeding herd. It looks more suspiciously like a bunch of bulls. All just enjoying them time here. The old boys club. And first comment coming through from Joanne Mello saying, hello Ralph, good to see you back, and it's good to be back. Thanks Joanne, and lovely to have you on board once again. Mercedes Bean saying, good to see you back Ralph, greetings Wild Earth crew and chatters, happy Monday. Straight back at you Mercedes Bean, and always a pleasure. And here a little southern black tit there in between the wax bills and the chin spot batis. Now Terry Pie asking, are there crocs in that waterhole? I'm not 100% sure, Terry Pie. I would assume so. You'd always assume so when you have these waterholes in these different game reserves. There are crocodiles in the park. So, as I say, the assumption is always that you should accept that there's most likely crocodiles there, but we haven't seen any up until now. And that does not go to show that there aren't any here. Well, that elephant looks like he's having a scratch on that tree now. Looks at just the right height to get his back in there. So, Dark Main Lover saying Wild Earth and Africam, and Ralph, thank you for another great live at the Waterhole show. Woke up at 3:30 a.m. to be able to join you on one of the best shows, and off to work a bit later on. So thanks very much for your message, Dark Main Lover, and hope you can keep those eyes open at work, but lovely to have you on board. And Catherine saying, I desperately need some bush time today. Well, I hope you enjoy Live at the Waterhole for now, and of course later on there'll also be the Sunset Safari, so lots to look forward to. So, and just a shout out as well for one of the private safaris that will be taking place later on this year. If you would like to go with me in person out in the bush, well, you can, and you can discover the wild heart of South Africa on a safari adventure with me on the Amakhala Game Reserve down in the Eastern Cape Province. There are limited spaces available for 6 lucky guests on this safari, and it takes place in December. If you'd like to find out more, just go onto the Wild Earth website and click on travel. So Ray asking, have you visited this waterhole? Not this exact waterhole, Ray, but I have been through this park looking for these elephants, these big tuskers. I saw 1 or 2 of them, but we didn't really spend too much time. I was on my way to Mozambique on a fishing holiday, but it is a wonderful park and a lovely part of the country as well. These 2 big guys having a bit of pushing and shoving. This is just generally what the bulls do, getting their muscle memory. It's always good to spar for the times when you're going to really need it. Seems like the one on the left's just having a bit of a pit stop, go to the toilet in the middle of the fight. And Crafty Jack saying, hey Ralph, good to have you back. I feel like I'm sitting right there. So peaceful. It is lovely listening to the birds and watching the largest land mammal having a bit of a spar with each other now, but dust bathing. Getting it in behind the ears. And you hear that southern black tit, that chwe-chwe-chwe-chwe. Small little black bird, one of the only little black birds, and it's got a bit of white on it. It's got a very particular call. So Lee asking a very good question around what are the do's and don'ts of self-drives at game reserves. So I think first and foremost, Lee, and this goes across the board in all the different national parks where, you know, right across southern Africa, from Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mozambique, wherever you might find yourself, even Swaziland, I think the first thing that we need to remember is to respect the rules of the park and to make yourself aware of all of those. You know, you normally get them when you arrive at the park itself, and sometimes the officials don't really sort of hammer them down enough, and it's very often the guides on site that sort of almost have to do the policing of that with the self-drive guests. So make yourself fully aware of all the rules of the park itself. There's some real basic ones. Normally stick to the road, do not get out of your vehicle except at the designated sites. And one of the biggest ones as well, don't feed any animals, not any birds at your campsite or at your lodge where you are, or the squirrels that come through, or the mongoose, the warthogs, etc. They are all wild. So we just need to always remember and respect those rules. It goes a long way into actually keeping the safety for the wildlife as well. Because injuries to humans will result in injuries and death to animals. If they kill anybody, they are going to need to be put down themselves as well. And this is what, you know, we really need to make people understand. So just following the rules, respecting the wildlife, and then respecting other road users as well. So, and one of the little tricks that I always use that helps with the congestion on these public roads is when you see a sighting, regardless of the rules of the road and how you drive, you normally drive on the left-hand side of the road in South Africa. Even if you see an animal on the right-hand side, don't stay on the left, move over onto the right and park, and so that you're viewing that animal. Because if you stay on the left-hand side, you're going to have a lot of vehicles passing you, and they also won't know where the animal is. So just make space, but go onto the side of the road where the animal is, and park in a nice spot that you have a nice view, and enjoy your sighting. When other vehicles come, they can obviously still pass you on the other side of the road, and it just makes for easier movement of vehicles, because there can be congestion, especially around high-profile sightings. So it's just to maintain that. And it's normally, especially with big cats, so there's lions, there's leopards or cheetah and whatnot, then you really have a congestion feeling about those sightings as soon as they are spotted. And so then it's just also trying to maintain a little bit of respect between the other road users. Don't use your hooter to try and move other people. Trying to speak calmly to others, and keep that respect, because a lot of these sightings do get a little bit out of control, and it's all just people fighting with other people. Then something to remember with elephants, you always want to give them right of way. So if you come across an elephant that's walking straight down the road at you menacingly, I see those impala getting a little bit busy there in the background. It is the rutting season, so there can be the males that are causing all the disturbances, but we always keep an eye out potentially for predators. But there's a lot of this going on currently now, so it's not always a predator that's causing it. Mostly the rams that are fighting with each other. So anyway, back to our elephant coming down the road at you. If you spot it from a distance, well, just move off a little bit of the side of the road and give him lots of space, that he'd be able to walk past you if he carried on his on the same line that he was going. So he's walking down the middle of the road, move off to the left of the road, park, switch off your vehicle, and be quiet. That is the best way to enjoy elephant sightings, if they're coming towards you and then they'll walk past you. And you can have a lovely close encounter. Don't start your vehicle up when the animal is right next to you, when you might be the scaredest of all, because that can give him a fright and then can make him actually go for you. If you see him off at a distance and he looks very menacing, i.e. that he's sort of walking with a swagger, his trunk entwined over his tusk, and he's moving with sort of a broad-shouldered walk to him, and it's difficult to explain how menacing they look when they are like that. And if you can notice between the legs, the back legs, that it's very wet, if it is indeed very wet and he's got all of these signs of being in must, try to get out of his way. Don't sit and wait if you can. And that's when you have advanced sighting of that animal. If you're stuck in a situation and the animal is in a spot that you can't give it too much space, just give it as much as you can, and once again, switch off and be quiet. And you also need to think about people behind you. You can't go reversing off at a rate of knots if there's other vehicles. Everybody just stop, be calm, be quiet, and that's the best policy. I think the most accidents happen with these elephants when people are following up behind them and they've had a couple of head shakes at them, but because people aren't understanding that body language of the elephants, they continue on behind the elephant, and it eventually gets mad and pushes the vehicle over. So respect for the animals, once again, really, really important. And if he shows you those signs that you're too close and he's irritated with you, well, back off and give him his space, and then he will be fine. If you can, give them their way past you, their escape routes. Once again, everything should be fine. So this guy's sauntering over here. He doesn't look very menacing. So just from his body language, I would say that he's not in must or not coming into must. And just seeing with the sun on his back legs there, looks very dry. So this guy will be a good viewing animal, and you won't have too many problems from him unless you give him problems, and then he'll return the favor. But otherwise, some of the best viewing animals are bull elephants outside of the periods when they're in must. And some of the best ways for me to find animals in the different national parks, normally when you go to the reception area for whichever park you've gone into, at whatever gate it is, sometimes at the lodges or at your place where you're staying, but check for the sightings book. There's normally a sightings book at most of these parks. So go through that and see where the animals have been sighted recently, and then you can sort of plan your game drives around that. Normally the big cats we'd be seeing early mornings, late afternoons, but it does also then generally give you an idea of where the animals are congested, where there are little big herds of elephants, where there may have been some special sightings of the likes of honey badger or brown hyena, for instance. And so it gives you a good idea of where to go and look for the different sightings that you may have. And then fill it in yourself when you also see sightings, and that helps then the other guests plan their attack as well. Well, those impala do still seem a little bit concerned, but they've all spread out a bit, and I'm pretty sure that there's not a predator about. I'm almost certain that that is rutting males causing all the nonsense. So it looks like all those bulls may have now moved off, and we're left with all the impala now moving into that same area, and of course these woolly-necked storks. So the woolly-necked storks, they're actually solitary nesters, so they don't nest in big groups like some of the storks may do, but the mates, as I'm pretty sure we're seeing here, they stay together pretty much all year round. So a nice little couple that we're seeing, and they do have quite elaborate courtship displays when they are nesting, and they make bull clatters while they're at the nest. They also do this sort of dance with their head resting back on the upper back while they're making a bit of a strange call as well. So, a question from Dark Main Lover asking, Ralph, when people get attacked by animals, even if they are critically endangered, do all animals get put down? Why does the animal have to lose its life when the area is home to them, not humans? It's a very good question, Dark Main Lover, but we've got to look at it sort of holistically. And every situation is different. They normally try, if there's a lot of evidence that showed that the animal was provoked by the people, then the decision might be made not to put the animal down. But it's quite a difficult situation if you have an elephant killing different international tourists. It's very bad publicity for the country as a whole. If it's an American, a German, a French, any sort of international guest, it does affect relations with that country, if you see what I mean, and there's sort of danger for those countries, people coming to our country, so that it's a big safety issue. That the assurance is that if it's a problem animal and it's killed somebody without evidence of provocation, well, we need to sort of reassure those international guests that we're not going to allow problem animals running around rogue, and to try and limit that danger. Now, if it's a critically endangered animal, it still depends on the situation. If you have lions or leopards attacking people, it's normally they're either injured or they are sick. Generally, you don't have this. It's weak animals that are hungry that will start to sort of go for people in the few instances when it has happened. And then it's all down to the situation. But it is a tough one, and generally the animal does need to be put down. If it's attacked somebody in and around a lodge or whatever it might be, that's why it's quite important. We see a lot more encounters of big cats, especially leopards, moving into the areas in the Kruger Park, and there's almost a promotion on social media for seeing these leopards inside the lodge, sleeping on a couch, stashing their cubs inside a bathroom. And then that's sort of promoted, where I think it's actually becoming a problem, because these animals are becoming so habituated now. They're actually going into human habitation too comfortably. And we always say, as wildlife experts, or seemingly wildlife experts, that the only safety net that we have as humans is that the animals are scared of us, regardless whether it's an elephant or a lion, because they still maintain that we're apex predators, regardless of our size and our ability. So if we lose that and we habituate the animals too much, their safety net for themselves becomes so much smaller. And so when they do decide to attack or to push us back, we're much closer to them, and we don't have, it's a lot more difficult for us to retreat and get out of their way or stay out of harm's way. So I think trying to stop the promotion of these kind of incidences, where it's amazing to see a leopard on the bonnet of a car, but it's not good for the greater good of that animal, because if it's doing that, I think it's almost signing its own death warrant, because sooner or later there's going to be an accident and it will have to be shot. So that kind of behavior needs to be tried to stop it. If an animal jumps on your bonnet, a leopard or a cheetah, to use it as a vantage point or whatever, Put on the windscreen wipers, blow the horn, get that animal off your car. It needs to get a fright and move away so that it potentially doesn't do it again. We don't want to be promoting this kind of behavior. But I think us as guides, we are complicit because we get guests into these close encounters on a regular basis, and the animals become more and more comfortable with our presence. So when they meet us in and around the lodge, it's almost the same story for them, and then they can't understand why they're being pushed off. So I think there's a big responsibility from the guides to not allow the animals as close to the vehicle and getting them as habituated as I think we've now entered into the realm of big dangerous wildlife not being scared of us, and we're starting to see the problems getting more and more all the time. We're getting more reports of these close encounters, and it's all fun and games until somebody loses an eye, and then the animal has to die. So I think we always just got to keep that in the back of our minds, that it might look wonderful now, but the bigger picture is screaming at us that it's actually going to be more dangerous for the animal as it goes further in its life. So also just bringing it back, Dark Main Lover, it's the economic input from guests and tourists that, and that's both international and local tourists to these parks. Even if you are South African, you're still a tourist in the park. It's not, you don't live there. So you're still on holiday and you're still enjoying that, even as a South African. But without those tourists and bring the money that they bring, there won't be the wildlife and the support that they get in the national park. So it goes both ways. If it pays, it stays. So if we have paying guests to come and see this wonderful wildlife and all the big five and all the rest and everything in between, then and a good story to tell when they go home, then we're going to have more people bringing more money, and the animals then are conserved, the fences are looked after, everything is maintained, and so on. So as the story gets better and remains good, we have economic input. If that starts to dry up, then obviously these areas may return back to private hands and more to farming and agriculture and livestock. So we've got to make the animals pay, but we've always got to just remember this respect for them and for each other and keep on telling the good story, because then the money keeps coming. So Juliet was asking, hi Ralph, we've just joined after taking our dog for a walk. I'm sure that's a happy dog. And have they cleared this waterhole of all the green weed? Now, I think there was quite a bit of duckweed, but I think they might have just actually filled it up. It was quite a bit lower, and sometimes very often when waterholes do lose a lot of water, there might be an increase in the sort of organic material or a lot of die off of organisms, and then you do have blooms of algae and certain plants. But the more water there is and the deeper it becomes, it obviously dilutes those concentrations, and those plants then sort of recede just to the side and they can't really maintain the entire water surface. So I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I'm thinking is what's occurred here. Is it's actually just been filled up quite a bit, and that's what's changed it in regards to the weed. All right, so lovely start here in KwaZulu-Natal at the Tembe Elephant Park, but I think it's time to change of place a little bit. Let's go to East Africa, Kenya, and Oldonyo. Where I was hoping we'd be able to see Mount Kilimanjaro off in the distance there, but it's just not clear enough today. We may start to see a little bit of the snow-capped peaks just a little bit to the right and straight behind this waterhole. You might see, it's a bit confusing because there's the clouds there, but I think I can see a little bit of the peak there, but it's not very clear. Anyway, lots of clouds around, so it is making it a bit grey. There's a lovely big Maasai giraffe waiting, it seems, to come in for a drink. Lovely silhouette of the giraffe there, and in the background the acacia tutus, or the umbrella thorns. The giraffe often like going and resting up in the shade there underneath the umbrella. This looks to be a bull just ruminating. Now I think that's an English expression. If you're standing mulling over your thoughts, you'd say that you are ruminating. Now watch as the cud ball comes back up. There it comes. Now he starts chewing again. That very dark tongue. Can't see in this light if it's black or if it's got a bit of a tinge of blue, but lots of melanin in there, and it's a very thick-skinned tongue as well. You would imagine so, with them having to negotiate all the thorns, or their favorite choice of leaves on most of the acacias, having lots and lots of thorns. So they've evolved their defense mechanisms against that. He's getting irritated by the flies. Not by the oxpeckers for a change. Oh, I just said that, and of course it is oxpeckers that are also irritating him. So Edward asking a good question. Do you think that there should be, say, a month every year where no humans are allowed in the parks? I think it's difficult, Edward, because that economic wheel needs to keep turning. So, you know, the money needs to continuously come in. There's huge overheads, from fencing to anti-poaching to the ecological teams, the vehicles, the lodges, etc. So especially also after post-COVID, I think it would be, the guys, a lot are still only starting to recover. get back into the full swing of things. It's taken time, and a lot of debt may have been incurred during those periods. Obviously, on a national park scale, it could be a bit easier, but still, they do rely a lot on the money that comes in with the guests. So I think what might be better, and what I've seen in some of the parks, like they used to do in Etosha, where, and even now to a degree, the western side of the park was closed to the public, and so it was only for research purposes. And so the animals could move into that area of the park and not have any contact with humans. And so much so that even now, when you drive in the western side of the park, they haven't set up a network there, so you can just drive through on one road. So it is still relatively limited. And the animals are scared of the vehicles. They run away as soon as you see them. Whereas on the eastern side of the park, it's just like being in the Kruger. You can have zebra almost brushing up against your vehicle. The leopards come and lie under your vehicle to get some shade. So very habituated with especially vehicles. There's no walking safaris there, so they're not used to that either. But I think potentially in the different parks they could have these sort of no-go zones, and where the animals then can get some solitude and whatnot. But the show must go on. If they don't pay, they don't stay. So sorry for keep on going back to that, but money makes the world go round, and so they need to keep on bringing that in. I think just with the sensitivity and trying to limit that kind of negative contact or too much congestion, etc., and try to space people, the lodges out as much as possible as well. But with interest, there comes more money, and so there's more potential, and so there's growth, and there's development. So it's a tough one, and I just think, where do we stop? It almost then, goes the way of Botswana, for instance, where in Botswana they've gone for quality over quantity, but it does make it very limited to the amount or the people that are actually able to afford it. So you can either go camping, and book the limited spaces available. And there's a lot of people that don't like camping or don't, prefer to do that. And then they need the lodges are very expensive, and so it's limited a lot of people from going there, which I think is in principle an excellent stance. But I think it's a shame that not everybody will be able to afford those kind of experiences, and so will never have them. So you have that, or you have some areas of the Kruger that is very commercial, and then you have traffic jams when there's a leopard. But it then allows the likes of school groups and cheaper group holidays for people that can't afford those exclusive private lodges to be able to go in and see them. So I think it's a bit of equality for everybody and making it available. I think it's just important just to try and limit those areas, almost designate and choose wisely those areas that are used for the different reasons and bringing the people in. You look at some of the sort of incidences when there's the big migrations in Kenya and in Tanzania, when you do have the crossings over the rivers where there's zebra and wildebeest crossing, and maybe there's lions waiting on the other side, and then you have this attack from the game viewers and tour operators that is just madness, utter madness. And I'm sure there's some fatalities of the animals as well with those mad rushes. It's a real Ferrari safari. So I think there obviously needs to be a little bit more rules for the guys and how they view those animals, and try to limit the amount of vehicles in a specific sighting. But it's all down to the country and the rules of the park, etc., and how they manage that on their side as well. But it's not a good sight to see when you've got 20 vehicles chasing after cheetah that are trying to hunt, and they obviously can't because they're being harassed by the vehicles, etc. Like I say, where does it end? People want to see that and they want to pay for it, so we bring them in, and I think it then needs to obviously go down to the tour operators and the guides that need to get more rules in place and have a bit more respect for the wildlife. So Erin was asking which courtship display do I like the most? Erin, I'm not quite sure. There's quite a few, but I mean, I think the one that's most internationally known is the peacock. It's obviously not a local or indigenous animal in South Africa. But with that in mind, I found a nice little article. It's actually a National Geographic article on Fascinating Africa. Speaking on courtship behaviors, they're saying the behavior which some animals demonstrate to attract a mate, and the desired result being mating and eventually reproduction. Such behavior is usually started by the male, with the female either accepting or rejecting him. Mutual courtship displays are sometimes performed by monogamous animals as a way of strengthening the bond between them. And it's a very varied practice. On the one hand, it could be very simple, with the animal only being required to make a physical contact to secure its mate. Or it could be far more complicated affair, relying on a mixture of communication signals. These may include displays of beauty or aggression, chemical cues, and vocalizations. And a few examples coming from Africa is that a male leopard tortoise will court the female by ramming her with his shell. So he literally bashes into her. However, once he's mated, he then loses interest and he'll be on his way. So very often when you see leopard tortoises seemingly fighting, you need to look a little bit closer, because it's normally a male actually trying to court a female by ramming his shell into hers. With rhinos, it's a long drawn-out affair with a prelude to mating lasting 14 to 20 days. And that's followed by 2 to 6 days spent together after the once-off copulation. Interesting one being scorpions, and the male scorpion will initiate a mating dance by gripping the female's pincers with his own. And this enables him to move her around an area for between 30 to 60 minutes, so that he can maneuver over a capsule of his sperm that he's already sort of deposited. Once she's in position, he will drop her onto it so that her weight releases the sperm onto her genital opening. It's very interesting. Ostriches, another very interesting one, and their mating dance known as cantling. It's quite spectacular. They'll approach the female with feathers raised before dropping to their knees and rocking from side to side as he waves his wings and twists his neck, and very often fighting between males as well. When elephants are courting, they may caress each other, intertwine their trunks, but it's a little bit more of a brutal behavior, similar to that of the leopard tortoises. And then, of course, I think the mating displays are most evident within the birds. There's some very interesting ones as well. I like a lot of the grassland birds where they actually create a lek, which it's L-E-K. It's sort of like an open area. And then they sort of dance in the middle while all the females sit on the grass around, almost like the audience in the stadium watching the dances of the little birds. And then they make their decision as to which one they're going to go with. So Sam asking, what other animals are as nervous as giraffe when they go to the waterholes? That's a difficult question, Sam, because there's not many animals that are as nervous as giraffe. Obviously, the smaller the animals, and normally the more nervous they are, because the more prone they are to predation. Not so in the case of the giraffe. However, it's got to sort of put itself in a very prone position, as we'll see it attempt to do now. But yeah, impala, normally very nervous at the waterhole, particularly when there's crocodiles present and they know it. So they're probably one of the more nervous. And all the antelope and the zebra and the rest, normally when they're on their own, they're a lot more nervous than if they're in the group, because obviously then there they've got, safety in numbers, more eyes, more ears, and much better potential for picking up predators if they're around. We also notice this with the giraffe. If they're alone, they're a lot more nervous. Maybe this one has now gone in for the drink because the second bull's arrived. So he does feel a bit better having eyes watching over him. You can hear the chirps of the oxpeckers now as well, the red-billed oxpeckers. They normally take the chance to have a drink when whoever their taxi is, and in this case giraffe, when they come in for a drink, well, they take advantage and have a drink themselves. Looks like they're jumping in under the dripping water of the giraffe and having a shower while they're at it. All right, so as always, lovely stop in here at Old Donyo, but I think let's a change of place. Let's head back to South Africa, and this time to the Madikwe Game Reserve and Tau. It's like we've got another bull elephant. Having a drink on the opposite end of the waterhole. What birds do we have? We've got a South African shell duck there with a little brown body and the white head. That'll be the female. The male's got the grey head. Looks like we've got some red-billed teals just off to the right of that. Got some black-winged stilts just near to that log. You can hear some blue waxbills close to the camera. And a lonely blue wildebeest just off to the right of the elephant. Oh, and there's even a zebra just poking his head in on the right-hand side there. So Geo was asking, can giraffe be identified by their markings? And obviously that was why we were watching them there at Old Donyo, and they absolutely can, Geo. Each and every single one is an individual, and each giraffe will have slightly different markings, just like us as humans with different fingerprints, just like the zebra having different stripe patterns. And so those patches on the giraffe will all be individual. Every single one will be different. So you can indeed, and when we started out in conservation, we didn't have all these electronic cameras. So it was either very expensive to take film cameras and take a lot of photos of the different markings on the animals. So us as students, we were tasked with identifying different individuals, and particularly with giraffe, we had to draw those patterns, and anything special that we could pick up on the pattern, we'd have to draw with pencil and paper, and then we'd refer back to them. And any kind of notch in an ear or any kind of injury that was obvious. Oh, you see those Egyptian geese having a bit of a fight there. Really going for it. They can have almighty fights. So that's how we did it with giraffe. With elephants, we normally drew their ears and any little notches that they had in their ears. Zebra, yeah, we weren't really tasked too much with identifying zebra, but we also had some exercises doing it. But generally, you're not really looking at individual zebra. They're not, one of those species that you'd monitor as individuals as much as the bigger animals like elephants and giraffe. And then also with elephants, we even used to check their tracks, because each elephant's cracks in their feet will be individual as well, and each one will be different. So we either drew them, or we also did plaster of Paris molds of the tracks themselves. And especially if there was something very particular about a specific bull, or he had a big crack in his foot or whatnot, then we would make those molds. And then whenever we walked out, we'd be able to notice if he had been around just from his tracks. So that helps as well. I'm just trying to think of any other animals. I mean, obviously with the cats, we look at their spot patterns, particularly with the leopards. It's a bit easier with the lions because they're not so solitary. So you generally pick up within the groups or the prides and their dynamics. So then you pick up the different individual traits. And a lot of the names that we've given to the different prides of the lions as something specific about that group, whether it's amber eyes, or there's a blue-eyed lion, or there's a big injury on one of them, or they've got a little mohawk, so all of these names, a lot of the long-time Wild Earth viewers will understand what I'm talking about. And so it's, you just use those then as your markers of identifying the particular individuals. With rhinos, they actually clip their ears in a different formula. So the notches in different places will equal different numbers, and then they're all added up, and each animal has its specific number that you will equate by looking at the notches in their ears. That are cut out, but it's like getting a hole in your ear for having an earring. It doesn't hamper the animal in any way, and a very good way of marking them as well. Elephants, it's a bit easier. Obviously, notches in their ears and their particular tusks, the shape of their tusks, the size of their tusks, and if any are broken or have anything special about it. Fang, in the area around the Sabi Sands, the one tusk that goes almost straight down and very thin. So you just use all these particular individual traits and then start to use that. But definitely, especially with the giraffe, we use those patterns on their bodies to identify the individuals. So just a lovely message coming in from Edward, just saying thank you, and that he loves watching Wild Earth with his mom, who really enjoys watching the animals and listening to the guides. And so a lovely message straight back at you, Edward. Thanks for joining us, and all the best to your mum as well. I hope she enjoys the show. Yeah, there's Natal spurfowl in the background making a racket, and the Egyptian geese back at their warfare, fighting. They're probably going to also make a lot of noise now too. Oh, another big bull coming into the fray here. Maybe you'll do a bit of mud wallowing. That would be nice. Come on, old chap. Get stuck in. So something quite interesting. We're hearing these little blue wax bills. They're very interesting little birds. They're beautiful with that turquoise front of theirs, although we can't see them now. We can hear them. But they're monogamous, even though they like to move in groups and forage together. I think it's just safety in numbers. But they make a ball-shaped nest that out of grass. It has a side entrance, and they normally do it in a very thorny tree. They're like the buffalo thorns that are very difficult to get into the inside of it without getting hooked in the thorns. And very often also next to a wasp's nest. So they've got the double protection. If anything, or a predator, a snake or anything starts climbing up in the tree, normally disturbs the wasps. And if you can get past the thorns, well, you might get stung by the wasps. So, very clever little birds. But the female lays between 2 and 7 eggs that hatch after only 12 days. And then the chicks, they will leave the nest and fledge already at around about 3 weeks, 21 days from hatching. So, very quick life cycle. And after 3 weeks, the babies are out. I'm just trying to see. This looks like a bigger bull that's moving in now than we've seen up until he's come along. Bit of a head shake as the ostrich came into screen there. Male ostrich just there off of the wildebeest, seemed to disturb him. Now, Aaron asking, do you often find female elephants without the herd? It's not often that you see that, Aaron. It can happen, but generally the females do remain in the herd that they were born in. And then you can have some breakaway groups, but they'll generally move with a couple of other, either sisters or aunties, and then potentially start a new herd. This is how you have breakaway groups and how they sort of do populate. It doesn't remain as just one herd. You see these elephants now chasing these ostrich off. It's like the road runner. Meep, meep. And off we went. So, yeah, generally the females will remain with their natal herd. And but every now and then you get a female that might be on her own. Maybe she's had an argument with, potentially the matriarch. Maybe it's a similar sized, similar age, similar experience female, and they're just not seeing eye to eye, and then decides to move off on her own. It's more so when that kind of thing happens that young females going off on their own. It's more competition or disagreements with older females that then will sort of normally take one or two of the individuals within their herd with them, though. Normally, especially their offspring. And so that's when you have these splinter groups that start forming. But it's not very common. And it looks like these guys are all coming in. Maybe there's some poker on the cards. The old boys club is getting together here too now in Madikwe. Often get to spend lots of time with the big bulls at the waterholes around midday. Seems like today's no different. Haven't seen any breeding herds yet. It's all the bulls for now. And always interesting to watch. You'll see if there's any greeting in amongst them. All the bulls now slowly moving off onto the right. Oh, maybe not. So that younger, smaller one coming in for a drink here. can hear now the Cape turtle dove or the ring-necked dove calling as well. There's a yellow-breasted apellis. So let's have a little bit of a scan and see what else is about. Now, there are quite a few elephants that came through, so maybe some of them have gone on to the muddier end of the waterhole. See, there are lots of zebra, even more wildebeest. No, maybe there's a bit of a meeting going on here with these big boys. No sign of the crocodiles just yet. There's one of the ostriches. And here, red-billed buffalo weaver now calling too. And this one's getting a little bit pink on his shins, coming into breeding plumage. It looks like the ostriches are getting chased around by the elephants today. Oh, and there's a spoon-billed stork. Busy, hunting in the water. What a sight that is. Lovely view. Looks like there's hardly a breath of wind. The elephant might go on chasing the ostrich, or has he lost interest? Well, these ostriches are looking in tip-top condition, and with the pinkening of their shins, I think they might be having a bit of displaying towards each other and trying to establish dominance. So let's see what happens with these two. Looks like they are, well, they were looking to have a bit of a meeting. The ones decided against it. See here, this one looks quite dark in between its back legs. So I would say he's also leaking from his temporal gland. and maybe that's why the other one got out of his way, because he can smell that he's in must, 60 times the normal levels of testosterone, and so he'd rather give him a wide berth. Even if one is slightly bigger, when he's not in must, they generally won't take on a bull that is in must, just because of that heightened levels of aggression that they have, that they seem to know to stay out of their way. And Joanne Mellows saying it would be good to see a crocodile today. Yeah, you never know. The warmer it gets, and the later on we get as well, the more chance I would say there is for activity. They are like solar panels, ectothermic, so they get the heat from outside sources, and so the more sun there is, more chance of activity from the likes of crocodiles. That being said, we've also headed into a little bit more of a lethargic period for the reptiles, but in this part of the country it still gets hot, even in the middle of winter, but it will get also very cold at night. What a sight this is, with all these bulls here congregating at the side of the waterhole. Looks like they're all trying to keep away from the chap in must. He's most likely in a bad mood. A very peaceful scene. Just softly drinking, not too much going on between them. And we see what looks like a little youngster within the group. He's only a teenager, I think, learning from all these old big bulls. So Joanne Miller, wondering if must has an odor. And Joanne, it most certainly does. You can smell it a mile away. It's, as the name suggests, although it's spelled M-U-S-T-H, is the condition that they're in, but the smell that they give off is very musky with a K. And when they urinate, it's even, it's very strong, but they're continuously dribbling urine the whole time, and it smells quite strongly. So not only can the animals and us see by their body language and their behavior and the wetness behind their legs, you can also smell, even if you're walking behind an elephant that's urinated or not, there will be dribbles on the road or on the pathway that you're walking on, and you can smell it. And the closer you get, the stronger it will get as well. So yes, it's a very big part of one of those signs that we do need to realize. At the height of musk, they smell very strongly. So, and it's very musky, as I say. A nice close-up of a fully extended trunk. Probably trying to get to some particular water that he wants. In the background there actually sounds like a pearl-spotted owlet that was just calling. Sometimes they call during the day. Otherwise, it might be the likes of a drongo mimicking. But definitely the call of a pearl-spotted owlet. Whether or not it was called by one remains to be seen. You see, a lot of the times the other birds use that call to distract the other birds, because pearl-spotted owlets eat little birds. So they obviously get quite agitated when that call is around. And if there's a food source that they're all after, and then one of these mimickers calls a pearl-spotted owlet, they all move off, and so then allowing them to feed. So it's one of those tactics of the mimickers to pretend to be a predator when you want to get in with the food source. So the question is, was it actually one, or was it a drongo, or a chorister robin chat maybe? Chorister robin, they also do it. Oh, hello, there's a couple of red hartebeest off on the right. Also just enjoying a bit of downtime. As we see that one zebra now flat out. The hartebeest would be doing a bit of ruminating as well, I'm sure. So, and of course, when there's lots of bulls around, there's always a bit of showing off that needs to be done as well. Boys will be boys. And of course, very particular shaped horns on the hartebeest, almost going straight back at the top, but very thick as well. So Tydenbach was asking, among the younger bull elephants, does must in one bull heighten the aggression in others around it? It could potentially, Tydenbach, because, you know, the younger bulls especially haven't quite realized what must does to them. You know, it's almost like a puberty stage that they, you know, potentially go through, very, very similar to humans. So maybe initially they try to fight back a little bit with the bulls that come into must of, you know, similar size, but I think they very quickly realize that they can't maintain that aggression that is just naturally so with the chemical imbalance that's coming with the one that is in must, with having those real increases in testosterone, and with it that added aggression. So I don't think it's really replaceable just with behavior in the chemical side of things. And so I think that they learn from a very young age just to avoid the bulls that are in must, unless they really want to fight. I think in a big way, this does secure a very big mix of genes with the elephants themselves, because there's no real breeding season and the bulls sort of come randomly into must. So the potential for being able to breed with females is much higher than if there was just one dominant bull and he was the only one that then mated with the females. Because when even if there is a dominant bull, if he's not in must, he very often moves off on his own anyway. And so then some of the smaller, potentially a little bit younger bulls will even get a chance to move in with the females when they come into must. So I think bulls in must are just best left alone. And a little harem of zebra, probably all with one stallion. So in Dark Mind Lover asking, is that one zebra asleep? I would say so. I think it's a youngster. That definitely looks like it's catching some Z's there. You can definitely see that it's still breathing, so I think it's fine. But catching some shut-eye. There's a grey heron looking to do some hunting, I think, with the teals spectating. Still no sign of the crocodilians. Obviously hiding somewhere in the water or in the grass. Looks like you may be onto something. Go, Mr. Heron. Yeah, it almost looks like the screen is frozen, but then I looked and I could see the ripples on the water. The teals were also dead still. Oh, this heron's very intent on something. Ultimate focus. Is it a fish? Is it a frog? I'll have to wait and see. So the Ellie's also milling about a bit. Is this our chap that I thought was in must? Doesn't look like it. Maybe a bit of a meet-up of these two. And there's an egret there as well. I think it's a great egret. Either great egret or intermediate egret. I'll see how big it is. And Amanda's loving the reflections in the water. It is beautiful now. Elephant reflections. And the lovely white from the egret as well. And now, finally, we have a breeding herd. That is lovely. Now we get to see the youngsters coming into frame. I'm wondering how long they'll hang around, especially if there's a bull in must. The breeding herds don't generally hang around when there are, so it will be interesting to see. See that little youngster, looks like he's been playing around in the white dirt. He's got it on his leg and all over his trunk. Trying to nuzzle in there for a drink from Mum. All right, so lovely stopping here as always, and lovely to see this breeding herd with all the big bulls. But I think let's change of place and let's head to Zimbabwe and Vic Falls. Where lots and lots of birds have pulled in, and look at that. Can you identify these different birds? We've got a few pelicans. Can you believe it? Joined in with the marabou storks. That's the first for me, seeing pelicans here. If we're lucky, we might see the resident crocodiles that are here as well. The yellow-billed stork in amongst them as well. Well, a few of them off on the right. Now, see, this must be quite an odd occurrence because the last, I've sort of just done a bit of a search, and it seems like there was lots of reports from 11 months ago that 3 pink-backed pelicans had visited Vic Falls Safari Lodge. How many have we got here? There's a number of them here. Have all come to visit. Maybe a bit of a pit stop is on their way to somewhere else. Oh, there was a hammerkop that just flew past the screen there. That's a grey go-away bird calling. And just with a little bit more digging to see how common it is to see pelicans in this area around Vic Falls. I've never seen pelicans there. So that doesn't mean that they're not seen at other times. It's just that I haven't. So I always thought that there weren't any here. But the only thing I can find is from the Birdwatch Zambia forum. And they say that the Clipper Fish Farm, which is about 30 kilometers upstream from Vic Falls, is brought into the area, and this was in June 12, 2020. So just bear that in mind. As you see the black heron there as well. He's obviously going to go do some of his shadow hunting. So the Clipper Fish Farm, 30 kilometers upstream from Vic Falls, has brought into the area a large number of birds associated with water, including pelicans. And for much of last year, that it would have been 2019, swelling to over 50 at one stage before it gradually shrank back around the end of 2020. There were just 3 at the farm when they did their bird count. And around the turn of the year, they were joined by a fair number of great whites. but they were not in evidence at the time of Livingstone Museum's January waterbird count. So, and then there were a few pelicans spotted on sandbanks along the river, but it seems they've split up a bit and sometimes coming back, and it seems like, so I think they have been introduced, but still nice to see. And of course they've got wings, so they can they don't have boundaries. They'll go wherever they want, whenever they want. But it seems like they like to return as well, as is evidenced here. So who would have thought that watching Wild Earth you will be able to get pelicans on your birding list? Wouldn't think you see them very often in the Sabi Sands. You might get one or two flying over at Amakala Game Reserve, but definitely not something you're going to see every day, that's for sure. We do get the odd one that comes through at Okokuyo in Etosha, but they pretty much keep themselves to the pan. But I have had pelicans come for a drink at the Okokuyo waterhole. And what a lovely gathering this is, with the undertakers as the marabou stalks, the lovely white feathers of the pelicans. You can hear another helicopter taking off, going up into the sky to see one of the 7 wonders, natural wonders of the world, Vic Falls, the largest waterfall on the planet. And slowly heading towards the end of the show. Don't forget that a little bit later there will be the sunset safari. And I, of course, will be back here, same time, same place, tomorrow. Oh, apologies. Sorry, we're Monday. I've forgotten the new schedules. There won't be the sunset safari later on today. I think you'll have to wait until tomorrow or Wednesday. But still lots to look forward to and lots of wildlife on your screens. But I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. So as always, thanks to the viewers for joining us. Of course, thanks to the wildlife who have been the stars of the show, and the whole Wild Earth crew for making everything happen. I hope you've all enjoyed the show. It's been a lovely one, I would say, from my part. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and always enjoy your questions and your comments. So thanks for sending those through. You can see a little pied kingfisher that's just landed there above these pelicans. Seems to be a little bit windy, so maybe he's going to struggle to balance on the branch there and catch his fish. But it might make it a bit easier for him with the ripples on the water. Slightly more difficult to see the fish, but then they can't see him either. So could help him nonetheless. Lots of grooming going on with these pelicans. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, folks, and I hope to see you all back again tomorrow. And that's it from me for now. Give it horns, bush greetings. Cheers.